Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who make a difference in the lives of others all over the world, locally, globally, and digitally. We're part of Rotary International, Service Above Self. It's a focus that we have, understanding the joy and the meaning that come from helping others. And we get to focus in on all kinds of amazing stories as a part of that with our club. Our club is online, E-Club, that makes sense, and asynchronous, which is a little unusual. What does that mean? Well, it means that our members can do the meeting anytime between Monday morning and Sunday night. It's for people who are crazy busy but have a heart for service, and we think that that's a niche that we're very happy to fill. So today, our speaker is in Dallas, Texas, Julianne Fineman. And Julie is a person with a really cool story to tell. We're going to do today's program as an interview. And so in doing that, we will be going back and forth a little differently than we normally do, but all good. We're excited to be able to explore Julie's really cool and interesting topic, which is the rewilding of cemeteries. So with that, Julie, please welcome yourself. Here we go. You are welcome to join us as part of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and we're happy to have you here. Please say hello and just give a little bit of background professionally on where you come from in your journey.
Yes, well, thank you, Rushton. It's a privilege to be speaking to your group, and it's the first time I am uh, basically having a Rotary experience. So thank you so much. Um, so I was in the entertainment industry for 30 years, photographing celebrities to shoot the ad campaigns from their movie posters to ad campaigns for television shows, as well as shooting editorials from InStyle magazine to Bon Appetit magazine, GQ, shooting celebrities at home, et cetera, et cetera. And I had the opportunity to travel the world, pull together teams to work with me on these campaigns that oftentimes I would have to pull in equipment from another country because one country didn't have enough equipment to support me in my setting up shop, so to speak. So I know how I'm very gifted at as an artist and finding other artists to support the work that we're doing together because it truly is a joint effort. At the end of the day, my name gets put on the photograph, but it takes a team, and you've got to find the right team members in order to sing. And I'm definitely gifted at that. And when I decided that my time was up as a celebrity photographer, I took a journey. I gave myself a sabbatical for a 1 year deep dive in full immersion in becoming an intern at the age of 52 on an organic farm in Bedford Hills, New York, called Rainbow Ridge. And this farm is an educational center for the Westchester County community to learn where their food comes from. At the time, they were producing produce for a community weekly CSA to come and purchase, as well as educational opportunities from cooking classes for adults to children learning where their food comes from. Uh, and it was a Four Seasons farm. So we were literally propagating seeds in the middle of winter, transplanting the seedlings in hoop houses in the dead of winter during nor'easters. And after that 1 year stint, I fell in love with the organic food industry and was really curious about who was upgrading the quality of our food supply in the United States. So I went on a 7 year journey interviewing these people, and I had a blog on the Huffington Post called Farm to Fork Across America. So you can see 7 years worth of archived work there about those that I those that I interviewed, from bakers to CEOs of major organizations to vintners, uh, working on upgrading the quality through best practices in the field and in the kitchen. Uh, then I journeyed into an incredible opportunity when I moved to Dallas. And my husband and I fell in love with this incredible home that so happened to be right next door to a neglected historic cemetery. But it was completely covered in evergreen. And so it was like the camouflage of, ooh, who wants to be living next door to a cemetery, right? It's like one of those creepy thoughts. And before we moved, we decided to buy the house. And before we moved in, I took a walk through as much as I possibly could of the cemetery because it was covered with privet, which is an invasive species. It's a wall to wall beyond carpet. It's a forest of thicket uh, privet. That is an evergreen, but it's an invasive. And so I did walk in as far as I could go into the cemetery. And I asked those who were resting there, their final place of resting, that I wanted to be a good neighbor. And I didn't want to be scared of living next door to cemetery. And let's be good neighbors. And they pretty much took me up on that offer.
I love
So
that.
yeah. So cut to 2 years later, when I became a master naturalist and a master gardener in 2019, I quickly learned I was living next door to a natural disaster. That's where I learned about invasives. And so, one armed with knowledge, you can't keep turning your head and pretending like it doesn't exist, especially when it's right next door to your home. I gathered my neighbors and I said, we got to clean this up. This is embarrassing. I mean, it was embarrassing before, but now it's really embarrassing. So it took us about 3 months to remove the privet surgically. And there's a process to that. I won't go into the nuance. And within 3 months, we finished at the tail end of spring, or at the beginning of spring. And with 3 months, we had a rush of beautiful yellow flowers, just adrift going across the part of the cemetery that has no trees. And then 4 of the 5 blackland prairie grasses started to emerge. And we realized we had a remnant blackland prairie next door to our house because his properties, usually cemeteries, are not disturbed land. They're only disturbed when they're burying someone, but the land hasn't been processed where it's disturbed the hidden seed banks that have been repressed due to being outcompeted due to the invasive plants. And once you remove the invasive plants, those native plants, the indigenous plants, just they want the sunlight. They come out screaming, saying, "Finally, I've been released." And when so we knew we were on to something there. And then a historian approached us and said, "Do you know about the life of Warren Angus Ferris, the pioneer who made this cemetery for his family and opened it up to the general population back then, which was very few pioneers, because he was the first person to survey all of Dallas." I said, "No, I don't know anything about him." And she gave me his book. And I fell in love with who this man was. He was a fascinating character. And he was the first person to survey all of Dallas. And nobody knows this. He's truly the founder of our city. And I'm thinking, how is that no everyone's so disconnected to nature? everyone's so disconnected to those who've come before us, including, our ancestors and key figures in our city. And I then had the aha moment as an artist. Wow, this canvas, historic cemeteries, are incredible canvases of bringing together, reuniting humanity to nature and to reappreciate the history of what came before us, the cultural history and the natural history. So that's the tapestry of what now makes the Constellation of Living Memorials. We're 1 year into our 2 year pilot. We've got 5 historic cemeteries in marginalized communities, historically marginalized communities, where the first year was to assess the land, uh, determine what areas were to be restored, intentionally restored to native habitat. And what that means is where it doesn't look messy and the vegetation does not grow in front of the tombstones, but looks really beautiful and will be a beautiful display of flora and fauna once it's evolved, which takes about at least 3 years to evolve. And so we finally got our equilibrium out of our during our first year. And now we're starting to engage with community to bring them in, to not have the same reaction that I have had of, ooh, who wants to go into a cemetery, especially if my relatives are not buried there. It's like, who cares? And so I realized we should care because as our city of Dallas grows, and it's growing exponentially. It's been predicted in the year of 2050, it will have doubled. The building here is extreme. And as we continue to urbanize and expand beyond uh, our blueprint of where we are now, we're going to be taking up more land that is habitat for wildlife. So taking my last 7 years of being concerned about the quality of the food supply for humans, it's now evolved into being concerned about the quality of the food supply for wildlife. And as we keep taking land that supports wildlife for urbanization, and as we start losing more green space, I realize that the cemeteries are low-hanging fruit that can be reimagined spaces for community engagement. And that engagement includes learning about the local history, includes learning about nature and what is truly native indigenous to this ecosystem right here in Dallas. It's really beautiful and special when you start connecting to it. And we're creating this opportunity through engaging with the community, multi-generational community. So how are we doing that? We've partnered with Texas A&M AgriLife, and they've got 4 siloed programs, one being the Master Naturalist, then the Master Gardeners, Master Wellness Program, and 4-H. The first 2 cater to adults. The last one caters to children, where we're going to be inviting the communities, surrounding communities in to learn about nature through Master Gardener, having the opportunity to become a Master Naturalist or a Master Gardener, or through their wellness program, where we're going to take the elders for walks around the cemetery to connect with nature, as well as ethnic cooking classes that are healthy eating, healthy recipes in the cemeteries. So this is where we're reimagining these spaces for community engagement to really, at the end of the day, connect with them, reconnect with their souls, which then in turn automatically connects to nature and ancestors because it's all connected through the magnificence of the infinite intelligence. And so this is my creative impulse. Your eyes just got really big. This is my creative impulse as an artist right now, is really having that experience with the infinite intelligence and having a role of not only personally interfacing with nature and doing beautiful restoration work in cemeteries, but to transform these cemeteries into landscapes that benefit the health of wildlife, but also public health. Because if you don't have a healthy environment, you don't have a healthy public because the environment has been compromised.
Well, all right. So let's jump into some questions on this.
Yes.
I think that there are all kinds of cool topics related to the work that you've done, the experiences that you've had there with the Warren Ferris Cemetery, and the community around you. So as I see it, you're really telling a story of finding a passion, finding a cause, and finding a project, and jumping into all of these things, right? So let's start with just the idea of cemeteries and undisturbed land. As I understand it, I mean, and I thought you explained it very well in the presentation. As I understand it, you've had some interest from a number of universities about the work that you've done, and I'm curious to learn more about how they approached you in terms of like, is this coming from the history department? Is this coming from the biological sciences department? Which botanical gardens? What is the group that essentially got you thinking, I have something that goes well beyond what it is that I've been doing just right here in my neighborhood.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a really great question because we were anticipating going nationwide in about 5 years. It's all a guess. Uh, but because we were featured in on the front page above the fold in the New York Times a couple months ago, November 29th, 2024, that was a calling card for those who are in the environmental industry and concerned about sustainability to reach out to me. And so the forestry department of Maine University, along with uh, water and soil district organizations from their city. There's three enterprises who came to me and said, we want to create the Constellation of Living Memorials guide for the state of Maine. And I said, oh my God, thank you so much. I so appreciate this. While you're at it, there's going to be other states that want to adopt this. Can you create a template so that other state, it would be very easy for other states um, to add on to our program as we build more stars to the constellation because we're ever growing. And they said, absolutely. So that is how that happened. And
Okay.
what's interesting is the three pillars of our organization. You have to have the three legs have to be extremely strong. So the first leg is the environment, concern for the environment. Second leg is you got to involve community to support and sustain the environment. You can't rely on government. And the third is government, the local government, because without their support, you're going to be wobbling along. You've got to have support. So what does that look like in the world of today in the constellation of living memorials? Well, just this week was on a call with the director of the Parks and Rec with her team, talking about opening up possibly some greenhouses that they own to partner to have access to for one of the four initiatives for this year is a youth native plant propagation initiative. And this program serves the city kids going to the city high schools to learn new management techniques through this practice that we're sharing. And they'll not only learn about seed propagation techniques and cutting techniques, but why is this so important? What is the history? What is the natural history? And how do we start preserving what we do have or bringing back, restoring as much as we possibly can to what was destroyed? Uh, and so it's a whole new process of caretaking. So hopefully, I will have a partnership with the city of Dallas, where then they will expand their program for instead of laying down Bermuda grass in city-owned properties, they'll be laying down sedges, which are an evergreen native vegetation that supports the wildlife habitat that has evolved over millennia, where they support each other's health uh, because they've evolved over time. And without that symbiotic relationship of committing to really restoring landscape, native landscape in a that is driven now by the city intelligence of the Parks and Rec Department, that we can now start changing the practices of those who live and work in the city. Because when they see the authorities do it, then they think, that's the right way to go. We're going to do it at home too with our properties. So this is the ripple effect that we want to have. And we're starting in cemeteries. It's the lowest hanging fruit because nobody cares about them. Up until now, they've been a thorn in neighborhood sides. They don't know what to do with it. Cities don't know what to do with it. Big developers don't know what to do with it. And they've been using old school practices of mow and blow to Dust Bowl status, which that equipment destroys the markers in the cemeteries over time, as well as doesn't support any wildlife, but they exist. So let's take advantage of what they have to offer to celebrate the circle of life. And that's what we're doing.
Fantastic. So you mentioned at one point, as you were talking earlier, that there was a pilot program with 5 cemeteries in different places. Can you tell a little bit about the structure of that pilot program? Are all of those cemeteries in Northeast Texas, or are they spread out more geographically broadly than that?
No, they're in South Dallas, southeast, southwest, which are in the past historically marginalized communities, but Dallas is really stepping up to changing that paradigm. And I felt like if we're going to be starting this program, because part of the byproduct of cleaning up these cemeteries is that the property values around these cemeteries go up. And so if we can help economically distressed neighborhoods by showcasing that when we beautify ours, it inspires them to beautify theirs, which then makes their neighborhoods, they're beautifying their neighborhoods, which automatically increases property value. And then they start feeling better about themselves. They start carrying a different frame of mind, which then has its ripple effects through the family and how they start interacting not only with their families, but in society, where there's shared concern. It's now become a community effort. And it's a new way of engagement. that's healthy for everyone. So there's healing. And part of it is a healing process of a bygone era that has been disruptive, not only for wildlife, but for humans.
So in terms of engagement, one of the first things that you did after meeting the seminary and connecting with it is connecting with your neighbors to say, hey, let's make this happen. I think for anyone wanting to do something to improve their community in any way, that step of inviting others into the process is a big one. Can you talk a little bit about that? The people that you know who were getting involved. What were their motivations? Were they just like, yeah, I want to help clean up, or I'd really like to learn a little bit more about the history here, or I'd really like to learn more about gardening. You seem to be into it. And what are the different things that got people to join the team of rewilding the cemetery?
Well, that is this year's initiative. Now, since we've stabilized in the cemeteries and we found our equilibrium, now we can start engaging with community. But I did a lot of homework last year of how to start engaging with community, and I learned a tremendous amount uh, in that white folk going into neighborhoods of people of color once again, they're being told what to do, even though it's a great idea. And there's resistance with that. So I've learned to to get involved with the residential homeowners associations, the local churches, the local schools, introducing ourselves and the work that we are doing, and how can we serve them in these areas that we're gifted at to support them on what their needs are in those sectors of support. So we're giving them ownership of how we come into their community instead of us going, we're here and this is what we have. And we're still recovering from our history, and that's supercharged in our psyches, but this is one way of de-escalating that charge. It is coming down considerably since the 60s, but there's still a lot of room to decharge and eventually eliminate this as part of our conversation. So this is part of the healing aspect of being mindful of how we're engaging with communities in a way that um, we're listening. We're listening to them, and it's a form of, it is healing circles. We're creating healing circles in with using the canvas of cemeteries for that purpose. And it's perfect because they're already portals of spirituality. And when we're in that spiritual frame of mind, you just walk in and you feel a shift. But when you come in to the space with your family or friends, or to have healing circles, or to have educational opportunities, or any other kinds of celebrations for your birth or for your death, for your arrival date or your departure date, it's all to be celebrated and it's all to be reckoned with so that we can heal. So that is how it's a process, and we're just starting that journey. So I'm looking forward to sharing what that our evolution, because I'm stepping in it in real time with you at this very moment.
Well, I think that is a fantastic place to finish the recording. So I would encourage, and in just a moment, I'm going to hand it back to you, Julie, for the final word. But to all of you who have taken your time to watch this recording and any of our recordings, we thank you. We thank you for the gift of your time in thinking about the possibilities for improving the world around us. I think that one of the messages you get from Julie's story is that when you become passionate about something, and like in good design thinking principles, learn to listen closely to the possibilities around you, the people around you, the people that you seek to serve, you can find ways that service can really flourish. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Julie, what would you like people to have clearly in mind as they finish watching the video or listening to the podcast?
If you have a cemetery in your neighborhood that is an embarrassing eyesore, or you're concerned about your own family cemetery in a couple states over, and you're concerned about its maintenance and care after you're gone, contact me.
I think that's a great message. And everyone, thank you. We will see you next week.